or drive them around, do all kinds of stuff with them. And I'd say there was only like one incident the whole time where someone was a real jerk.
Right.
Won't name the artist, but everybody else was fantastic, and I still talk to Linda Binglis. So it's great. That was wonderful for me before I went to art school, because then I go to art school and there it's like everybody is an artist. I mean, they think they're an artist anyway.
Right.
And I'd actually had this little bit of contact with like real people who were important at the time and still are, and it kind of grounded me a little bit. I didn't like say, I'm going to be a fantastic, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I just said, this is something I could do,
Right.
And so
you had some context.
yeah, exactly. And I knew they were regular people, even though they were superstars. They were just, they still ate lunch, and they sat around.
Right.
Yeah, it was very good, and Robin helped me get George Green, who was another artist around at that time, an instructor. He's the one that helped me get the job with Janie Sue Lee.
Sure.
Look her up sometime. It was a very important gallery for Dallas at the time,
Yeah.
And
so was El Centro where it is now back then?
downtown, yeah. Which was also cool, because I lived in Oak Cliff and I'd go to El Centro, and back then downtown Dallas was kind of cool because they had bars and thrift shops and stuff right downtown.
So you go to RISD. It's funny, I read an article recently where they were trying to monetize the value of art educations, right?
Yeah.
And they were trying to figure out, is an MFA worth it? And they were saying, well, if you get an MFA at one of these 2 or 3 programs, you'll probably have a chance of making your money back, but it kind of drops off.
Sure.
But they were saying that the BFA from RISD was as valuable as an MFA from some of the big programs in terms of like who's come out of the BFA programs at RISD and what they've been able to do with
that's
that.
That's really interesting, because that's something Frances and I talk about a lot, because I don't have a MFA. I got a BFA from Rhode Island School of Design, and you're expected to go get an MFA, and I didn't,
Right.
And in some ways I think it might have been a little bit of a problem for me because of when I did go to RISD, and but it was good that I took so many things at RISD that I probably wouldn't have taken if I just had been doing it on my own or something. It was structured. The studio space was it was horrible. I mean, as a sculpture studio, there was none. I mean, it was nothing.
Right.
I think that's changed now, but so we all got places off campus where we'd have a studio.
So did they try to make you an illustrator there?
Oh God, no. But I did, and I transferred, and this is interesting. A lot of my stuff transferred from El Centro. I think I had to take English and some other stuff, a couple art history classes, I think,
right,
at RISD, but that was it. And then it was all studio stuff, and so you go to this pretty crazy deal called called summer session, where all the transfer students go spend the summer in the dorm at RISD, which is it's like some of these people had never been out of their hometown, and it was like this really weird assortment of people who were the best artists from their schools. Now they're in RISD, and they're all put them in this room for 6 weeks.
Sounds like Lord of the Flies.
Oh, it was a mess, man, and people were freaking out every day. And I don't have to draw. I've never drawn in my life. That kind of shit,
Right.
It was, and some of those people that I met at Somerset, I'm still friends with. So it was cool.
That's really interesting, because I've heard similar stories about high achieving kids going to places like MIT.
Yeah.
And everyone that goes to MIT was a valedictorian.
Sure.
You leave home thinking, I've got the biggest brain. This is who I am. And they get up there and you're just another guy. A lot of them struggle with not being, not being the head of the class.
A lot of people that went through that summer session and couldn't, and had so much trouble with that, they didn't go back. They just couldn't do it, or they flunked out or whatever. Some people who were the best in their class, and I thought I probably was, it worked just the opposite of me. It made me even more determined to be around these other people who were like the best people, they thought. And you kind of think, yeah, but I can do this too, and blah blah. I had a good. It made me more determined than ever to be amongst those people, the other transfer students,
Right.
And then some people who came in and wouldn't, I remember this one woman who was just, God, she was just painfully shy, and she could draw everything and could not wrap her head around any kind of conceptual ideas. We even had like this conceptual kind of class she had. And I thought, oh, poor thing, and then, God, she did great, man. She went on and did all these things, and she's a wonderful painter now. I mean, it's just
awesome.
It made her do the same thing that happened to me. She just said, oh, this is great, It was a good deal. Art school, for me, was a very good thing. And, getting out of Texas and moving someplace, goddamn Rhode Island, Jesus, I mean, it's like very small,
Right.
But I had a lot of good friends, and they had this thing called winter session, which I think they might have that at most schools. I don't know.
Right.
But I always took photography because they had Harry Callahan taught there,
Right.
Aaron Siskin taught there, and so you'd take these winter session classes, with these guys who were like hugely famous, and of course they were, they were older, and they'd had a long teaching career and wonderful photography careers, and they were just there to like. Sort of like we're doing, talk to people and show people how to do things, and this is all way before digital. And
right.
But man, that was great. And I used to go to this one bar in Providence, which was like really rough, and a few other guys would go there or whatever. Man's bar too, no women allowed. Right. That was bizarre. But Harry Callahan and Aaron Siskin both used to go in there in the mornings and drink coffee and shoot. I think Aaron Siskin. I don't know. One of them would shoot pool or something. But,
right.
It's just this. They were kind of regular guys, it's just the greatest. That was so cool. And Paul Crott, who's dead, he was another one that was really big in the photography department. Anyway, that was a wonderful thing about RISD, and I got a hell of a lot out of it. I probably could have taken more, kind of like instructional kind of classes and learned a little more, but I kind of had this vision of things like the more conceptual kind of work was kind of what I was thinking about.
Right.
And so for my senior show at RISD, which they would give you as a senior sculpture student, everybody got to have a senior show. It's great. And of course you'd have to like 4 people, but they had this, the Woods Gary Mansion was the place you'd have it. And it was a mansion up on the hill.
Right.
But the downstairs was all these rooms you could have exhibitions in. And so my entire senior show was all made of shadows. And scrim with spray painted lines on it, and a piece of floating plate glass that had like a kind of a structure underneath it that you couldn't see. It was 3 pieces. I thought it was brilliant, and in fact my critiques were good, but I mean, still, even though it was RISD, this kind of stuff was like, I mean, people still went to RISD at that point to learn how to carve wood and things, and which, nothing against that, but I remember being a little shocked when I got there, because I thought, man, everybody's going to be into like conceptual things and, real experimental work, and man, I got there and it was a lot of traditional things going on. Again, there's nothing wrong with that in a school, but I was expecting something a little different, and so what I basically did my whole time there was, like I told you earlier, we got a loft down on Pine Street, this painter friend and I, and we just had a great big studio where we'd invite people over to look at these installations and things that we'd done, Right. So we did it kind of a different way. Even though we were at RISD, we would sort of go there and take our classes and stuff, but we did a lot of stuff out of RISD because of the studio space,
Got it. And so when you finished up, were you drawn to New York, or? Boy,
that's a sad story. Not sad, but that was what you did.
Well, I mean, it's how it typically works, right? Yep. I mean, you go to school. There's a critical mass of classmates that are saying we're going.
Yep.
Like, hey, we can split the rent on an apartment 8 ways.
Yep. And that was it. And this is 1973 too, so you could go and 5 or 4 people lease a place downtown, and you could do it. I mean, it was expensive, but it wasn't unreal. And so sure, there was 3 or 4 of us that were going to do that, and we had it planned. And I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to Texas for the summer and get some money saved up, and then I'm going to come back. Well, shit, that never happened. I mean, I'd get down to Texas, and get with my old friends and stuff and try to do artwork, and it's not working, and it's just, pulling my hair out. And then I realized, Christ, I'm never going to be able to get back up there. And of course, after 6 months, everybody's starting to do other stuff.
Right.
Plus, I only had a BFA, so a lot of my buddies had gone off to grad school and stuff. So it's like, shit, what do I do now? And so I actually continued to do artwork sort of on my own in one room of my house, and pretty miserable. And finally I thought, this is not working. So some friends I went to high school with said, hey, we got the construction business down in Austin, let's all move to Austin and build houses. And I thought, why not? And at that time they're paying good money, and I was like real strong and tough guy back then. So I moved down to Austin and built houses for a year, and I got to tell you, it was great because I could always make stuff, but I kind of figured I'm actually really building things. I mean, we went out and built like these 3-story houses, out by the lake, and it was like, Christ, this is great, because as a sculptor, I'd never built anything like that.
Right.
And then the greatest thing too is, when you frame a house, we were framers, you frame a house. There's one point where there's nothing on there, but there's no siding or anything. So you got this beautiful skeleton with all these shadows stuff. And I remember telling the guy I worked with, I said, man, if you could just leave part of the house like this would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And he goes, you're absolutely nuts, man. What's wrong with you? And then I realized, okay, I'm an artist working with these carpenters, so there's got to be a different thing going on here. I guess I left something out of this, one part of this, that getting out of RISD and moving back to Texas and not really knowing what to do. Another instructor of mine said, you might want to apply at SMU to grad school. You ever think about going to grad school? And I was kind of going, what am I doing, And I thought, well, not really, but why not? And he said, well, do this. No. So I applied for grad school at SMU, and at the last minute some things happened, and I kind of got crossways with someone at SMU, and I thought, I don't want to teach. I don't especially want to be in academia for another 2 years or whatever. What in the hell are you doing, man? You're going to, if you get in, you're going to be taking up a space where someone who wants to teach or go on to, it's their space,
Right.
So I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter and mailed it because there was no, Instagram or anything like that. And that very afternoon, this undergraduate calls me and says, hey, Tom. I said, yeah. He said, they're showing the graduate slides of people who applied, and they just said you got into grad school. And I went, oh, shit. And it was like, remember that show I Love Lucy, where she was like, oh, my God, and like running to the post office to get something. So I thought, the hell with it. So actually I got accepted, and then I said, please withdraw my name. It was accepted and withdrew at the same moment. So I didn't go, which was good for me at the time, and went down and built houses, and then came back and thought, what am I doing?
Right.
I did it for a year, and I came back and went, oh my God, I'm with these carpenters all the time, and they're always talking about sports, and I don't know anything about it.
So at that point, did you think, hey, I've got enough money from building houses that maybe now I should go to New York, or you're like, did you decide?
That would have been a smart thing to do, but I thought, I've got some money, and Austin's not working out for me, and I really need to do some artwork again. So I thought, and I was drawing and doing all kinds of stuff, but nothing was happening. And so I thought, well, I can always go back to Dallas, and then my folks have this rent house I can live in, which I did, and that sort of worked out. And then it did work out to the point that I met some local artists in Dallas who I hadn't known at El Centro, some different people, and some things were going on, and everybody hung out at the Stoneleigh P, the old Stoneleigh P before it burned, or Knox Street Pub. And so there was a group of artists that hung around bars and were doing legitimate work, and photographers and things, that there was a community going, and I thought, this is pretty cool. And so the whole thing about grad school kind of went this way, and moving to New York would have been great at the time. But I thought, let me do this, and again, maybe putting it off or something.
Right.
And, I stayed here and tried to get in